Okay, excellent. So for Shoma, we have Life Orb Heatran with Heat Wave, Earth Power, Terra Blast, and Protect. Helping Hand, Trick Room, Lunar Blessing, Moonblast, Cresselia, but there's no Ursaluna. Instead, it's Sylveon with Choice Specs, Hyper Voice, Terra Blast, Hyper Beam, Sleep Talk, Grass Knot, Amoonguss with no Protect.
So they're talking about Sylveon actually being on this team, and I think that makes a lot of sense. We saw Sylveon perform really well at Worlds in the juniors division. Um, Hyper Voice is really destructive, it turns out, when it's pixelate boosted. Uh, and Sylveon's pretty bulky, and it fits like a Trick Room mold a whole lot better than something like Fluttermane would. Um, feels a little bit underrated in the current format. To all of the Sylveon fans, overwhelming joy. Sylveon feels viable right now. Um, Drops a couple of the weaknesses that we're used to seeing on Fluttermane, right? Like you no longer have the ghost weakness, and you fully remove the Sucker Punch neutrality, the dark neutrality. So a pretty interesting mon to run. Um, I think specifically on Trick Room teams, it's been pretty underrated for a while. The only other real answer for like fairy type damage, specifically in a trick room setting, would be like an Amorous, but an Amorous is nearly impossible to get legitimately, and have it be 0 IV, whereas Sylveon you can reset for a trillion times, right? Um, and an Amorous also does not get access to Throat Spray. I don't believe it gets Hyper Voice. And even if it did, it wouldn't be hitting for fairy type damage. So Sylveon fills a pretty interesting niche right now. It's cool to see it around.
Volt Switch Iron Hands of the Assault Vest, and actually Choice Band Landorus, which is not a set we've seen very often thanks to Rillaboom. And there is a Rillaboom on the other side. So this is Urshifu Water, standard set. Choice Band Arcanine Hisuian.
Arcanine Asumi Choice Band, I think, is also pretty underrated in the current format. We've been seeing a lot of transition away from Dragonite into stuff like Arcanine.
Okay, there are two very unusual sets here. There is Life Orb Chen Pao. So that's going to be doing...
Life Orb Chen Pao gives me terrible memories because I died to that at Milwaukee Regionals. I EV'd to live normal Chen Pao because I didn't expect to see any Life Orb. And then my Fluttermane lost a speed tie and died to it because it had Life Orb. And I lost the match on the spot. It was game 3. And I knew it was a speed tie. I know I'm max speed. I know they're max speed because Chen Pao's always max speed. And they killed me before I could do any damage. And if they hadn't killed me, I probably would have gotten multiple KOs that round or multiple KOs that turn and won the game. Life Orb Chen Pao gives me so many terrible flashbacks. I don't ever want to talk about it again, and here it is.
Damage. And there's Booster Energy, Calm Mind, Dazzling Gleam, Shadow Ball, Protect, Terra Grass, Fluttermane. So these are both very unusual sets.
Calm Mind Fluttermane is another thing that I think is pretty good that just people haven't caught on to yet. Bulk your Fluttermane out and Calm Mind it. It's still pretty fast. It still does great damage even without investment, right? You can invest literally 0 special attack points into Fluttermane, and if you're as long as your IVs are high, like 31, which they should be if you're running Fluttermane anyway, you'll hit 155. So after a singular boost, you're stronger than any other Fluttermane that's not Specs. And you hit 232, I believe is the exact number, because that's I've run this set before, so I think that's what it is. And 232 is enough to do like very serious damage to basically everything. It'll one-shot a lot of stuff that Fluttermane wants to one-shot, and your bulk is so intense, like your bulk is so monumental at that point that you're not really dying to a whole lot of the counters. I feel like it's pretty underrated. It's held back specifically by how hard it is to do setup moves, right? A setup move is always going to be less valuable than having that power on tap immediately. But we're seeing lots of screens right now. We're seeing like Grimmsnarl being very popular. We're seeing Cresselia sitting on the field and healing his teammates all the time. If there was ever a time for Calm Mind Flutter to make it like a really big splash, it's right now.
And I'm really curious to see how they're used together. We also have Tornadus as the final Pokemon. So this is going to be a really interesting matchup. The Terra Grass actually looks pretty decent here because it resists Iron Hands, it resists Landorus, really good into Amoonguss. And it's interesting to see Sylveon. We saw Sylveon in the finals of the senior division actually win the senior division world championship.
Sorry,
this
it was
year.
the
And
senior
looked really
division. It
strong.
always
And
screws
I
me
felt
up
like
because it's junior,
a
senior,
lot of players,
master.
myself included, kind of figured that if you wanted offensive
Whereas in my
parity
head,
in
it's like
Damage, your option
senior
was
must be the
Fluttermane,
master's
Smash Wave,
division,
Itch,
and then it's
Shoma's team
junior, and
actually
then
does
it's
not
like
have
whatever. But that's not how it works in
Fluttermane.
Pokemon.
So I'm really curious to see how these teams match up against one another. I mean, they're obviously both strong. They both won their first round of the day. So yeah, I'm really curious to kind of see how they do against one another.
Be like hands.
I hope they bring it up on a
More
screen.
Pokemon
I want to
than
look at
going
it.
into Amoonguss is kind of how I feel. Is Oma actually
I want to look at it and do some analysis. Let me see it.
Western Twitter.
There we go. Cool. All right, I'm gonna quick take some screenshots. So I can look at these during the match. All right. So I have those saves to look at during the match. Let's grab the little pen software. One sec. I always close it out when I'm done using it just because it makes it harder for me to accidentally use it during a match. But this is really helpful for us for our purposes. So we'll bring it back up after each match so that I can do this analysis. Move back to full screen. Pop over here. Grab the pencil. All right, so what stuff do we see that is particularly interesting? The first thing I want to look for every time I look at these is like what's outside of the norm, right? So we have these two being outside of the norm here. Surprised they didn't call this out. There's a Terra Poison on the Chien-Pao. Specifically, I assume to be better against Fluttermane. You know, when you're not running Focus Sash, your defensive Terra becomes a lot more important, right? And the defensive ability of Ghost, specifically removing Fake Outs, becomes a lot less important, right? So I actually really like this. It gives you an immunity to Fluttermane, and Poison is one of the best defensive Terra types in the game. Poison and Water are the two best. They have the least amount of super effective moves that can hit them. And Water is generally preferred, but I think Chien-Pao specifically makes Poison look a lot more appealing. Because if you think about what can hit Poison, it's Psychic, which Chien-Pao can hit super effectively with a stab move, and Ground, which Chien-Pao can hit super effectively with a stab move. So Chien-Pao is actually in a unique position to be able to run Terra Poison and not really have any major weaknesses, right? Because you're not bringing those Pokemon in to deal with the Chien-Pao because it'll just one-shot you. So I think that's a super, super interesting way to run it. Life Orb, due to this Terra type, Life Orb actually makes a lot of sense. This is super sick. I like this a lot. I've been looking for interesting Chien-Pao sets forever because I feel like most people don't run interesting sets, and it very, very boring Pokemon to me for the most part. But this is super interesting, and all it took was this. All it took was Poison Terra for all of this to be unlocked. So super interested in this Chien-Pao. I like it quite a bit. I do see Arcanine Choice Banded with Intimidate. I prefer running Rockhead on this, but this one's not bad by any means. Terra Normal E-Speed is sort of does what Dragonite does, but it gives you an Intimidate. So I guess specifically in this case, right, if you're not going to be taking advantage of Head Smash most of the time, like it seems like this is more so designed to be a partner for Chien-Pao than it is to be a partner for Tornadus. If you're running this mainly with Tornadus as your friend, I think Rockhead makes a lot more sense because you can sort of guarantee the outspeed and then Head Smash hits. Now, because you're probably running it next to Chien-Pao, at least that's my guess, because of the Intimidate and the normal Terra and all that kind of stuff. It does make a little bit more sense to go with Intimidate, because if you're running an extra Chien-Pao, you're probably just going to spam E-Speed, just like Dragonite did, right? And you still have Rock Slide too, so you have another move that doesn't inflict recoil damage on you, and it's a spread move, and it can potentially flinch. So even if you're running an extra Tornadus, you don't really lose out, because fast Rock Slides from a Choice Banded Arcanine Hisui still going to do a lot of damage and potentially swing the game in your favor with the flinches. Rock is also positioned to be a really powerful type right now. I mean, it's good into basically every Terra of Flutter Mane. Head Smash, Oko's basically every Flutter Mane I've ever seen. Rock Slide does really great damage into them. It's good against Chien-Pao typing wise, offensively. It's good against fire types. It's got a lot of advantages. It's not quite as much as it was previously in in previous regulations where Chi-Yu was a lot more common. But Rock is still a great offensive type. And we see a lot of genies right now, so being able to kill the genies pretty reliably is nice as well. So I like that set. I like that it's here. Flutter Mane, Calm Mind, as the really like only reliable special attacker on the team. I'm not sure how much I like Calm Mind. I made this observation earlier today, and I've been making this observation for a bit. This is a very physical attacker dominated format. Once again, we see on Hirofumi's team that Urshifu, that they have four physical attackers, right? Urshifu, Arcanine, Rillaboom, and Chien-Pao. 4 physical attackers. Only one special attacker, really, because I'd consider Tornadus to be more of a support Pokemon. Not as bad as a Moongus in terms of its damage output, but it's still not there for its damage output, So really interesting to see a Calm Mind variant on this, given that most of the time you're not going to have a different special attacking option to try and like come in and immediately blow something up. So I'm not sure how much I like that specifically on this team, although I do like the concept of Calm Mind Flutter. So that's all I really have to talk about that. There is Rocky Helmet on Tornadus, but I don't expect that to be like it's cool tech, but I don't expect it to be like a super crazy thing, right? Now let's take a look over at Shoma's team. The big thing that we do need to talk about is Sylveon. This is a really fun set. This is actually, I ran this exact set a while ago. Sleep Talk on it is, actually, this might be the exact same set. Yeah, Choice Specs, Terra Blast, Terra Fire, Sleep Talk, Hyper Beam, Hyper Voice. I believe this is the exact set that won in the seniors division, actually. But yeah, Sylveon does amazing damage. This seems like a lot more of a team that relies on Trick Room to deal with really fast opponents. And we're in a situation where you can, like, if you're in a situation where you can just sit there and throw out Hyper Voices whenever you want, that's a pretty good situation for Sylveon to be in. Sylveon also gets Hyper Beam as like a one-time nuke. That's way cooler than I think a lot of people get it credit for. Hyper Beam boosted by Pixelate. I don't remember the Pixelate boost. I think it's 1.25. So that would be like well over 200 base power. If I'm doing my math right, which I might not be. So, really, really powerful. Coming off of Choice Specs, coming off of its pretty good special attack stat. And Sleep Talk specifically to deal with a Moongus is pretty sick as well. I think Sylveon's super underrated, like I said before, and this set, I think really, really encapsulates that. We see Life Orb Heatran. This is a lot more offensive of Heatran than we've seen previously. It does still have Terra Grass. Terra Grass is going to be pretty huge, I think, in dealing with this Urshifu. And the Earth Power Tech actually comes in pretty clutch here, being a way to deal with this Terra Poison Chien-Pao. Like I said previously, most of the time you're running Terra Poison, you're not going to have any downside. This Heatran is introducing the downside. So that's a cool mind game they're going to play with each other. Other than that, I expect Trick Room is going to be really, really important in this matchup. It does have safety goggles and not mental herb, so if they happen to lead Tornadus, they can shut that down basically whenever they want, right? But it's still something to keep in mind. Choice band Lando also leads me to believe that this is probably going for more of a trick room kind of situation, right? It's probably going to be pretty bulky. I think Lando with no speed investment hits about 112, if I remember right. It's not super fast. And next to Cresselia, you could run Earthquakes all day, you know? So like a fake out, Iron Hands, fake out next to Cresselia, get Trick Room off, Volt Switch out, bring in Lando, start doing insane damage. I could see that being really, really powerful. Amoonguss as well, you know, it's just a really solid support Pokemon. We've seen this exact set a lot. This is Terra Water Rocky Helmet. This is probably the most standard set currently out there right now, with one extra tech move. It does have Grass Knot. I don't know what Grass Knot's for. My guess is probably Ursaluna, but honestly, I don't know. It could also be good against Urshifu, but I don't think Urshifu is that heavy. But it is still good damage, right? I'm not sure. I think Giga Drain might be better, but it is still pretty decent damage. And Grass Knot has such a high upside for anything that is ground or water, or like anything that's hit super effectively by grass and touches the floor and is heavy, right? So it helps with deal with like Dondozo as well. Interesting tech move. I'm not sure how much it'll actually come into play in this match. In fact, I would wager to say that it probably won't come into play during this match, but an interesting tech nonetheless. Very standard Iron Hands, Terra Grass, Assault Vest. This is the most standard Iron Hands set. Lando Choice Band does a really absurd amount of damage. Landorus is 145 base special or base attack. So you're dealing really serious damage with Stomping, Earthquake, Rock Slides, U-turns, all that, right? So yeah, I think this is really going to be a battle of two speed controls, right? Last time I said it was a battle of two Heatrans. This time I think speed control is going to be the most variable thing here. Although honestly, I don't think you really even need to bring the Tornadus. Based on what I'm seeing from Shoma's squad, I would expect all of these Pokemon to be relatively slow to try and take advantage of Trick Room. If you can deny Trick Room coming out without bringing Tornadus, that frees up all of your attackers to do a whole lot more damage. So that would be what I would look into first. If that doesn't work, I know that I can always fall back in Tornadus to try and stop Cresselia and Amoonguss from doing their jobs, because Taunt is just such a disgusting move. I'm not sure we'll see much from Chien-Pao's Terra type in this specific game, but it does look positioned pretty well to just do a lot of damage into the opposing team. Urshifu is going to be pivotal for sure. Urshifu ignores the Intimidate from Landorus and can punish it very cleanly for a KO if it doesn't Terra. Similarly with Heatran, there's not a lot of stuff that really beats Urshifu straight up, but a lot of it loses if it Terras. But having Urshifu to force a Terra could be game changing here. If I had to give an advantage to one team, I think probably Hirofumi's is a little bit better, but it all depends on what situation, what win cons we can actually reach towards, right? I definitely think Shoma's win con is centered on Cresselia, so it's going to be about getting Cresselia to do its job. If Cresselia can do its job well, Hirofumi probably loses. If Hirofumi is able to keep Cresselia from doing what it wants to do, I'd expect it to win. Or I'd expect them to win, sorry. I was speaking in terms of Tornadus and Cresselia. But I'd expect Hirofumi to win if they can prevent Trick Room from going up for the most part. Although there is a whole lot of stuff that can be done. We've seen Fake Out be so powerful for so long. There is a lot that can be done if Iron Hands just makes an appearance and goes crazy with Fake Out and a Volt Switch, switching out, coming back in, faking things out, sort of nullifying the speed advantage that Hirofumi could set up, right? So I'm looking at speed control and I'm looking at Fake Out as a potential answer to a lot of speed control as my two main things to look out for in this match. Let's remove all of this writing on the screen and get into it.
Kiss actually over Dazzling Gleam.
Right. So it's interesting to me to be in this wet Japanese tournament and we see it really, I think for the first time on stream, even since like the World Championship.
Yeah.
I don't really remember seeing it on stream there. So yeah, I'm really excited to see that. And yeah, you guys can all see the teams right up here. Just as we talked about, yeah, it's Tornadus versus Trick Room.
Yeah, I guess there's not that much speed control. Well, I think Hirofumi, I think has a lot more ways of moving first, right? We actually see a ton. We have Aqua Jet on Urshifu, Extreme Speed on Arcanine, presumably speed boosting Fluttermane, unless it's the forbidden special defense boosting Fluttermane, but presumably speed boosting Fluttermane, Tailwind on Torrent,
God, Sped F
Sucker Punch
boosting
on
Flutter.
Actually, every Pokemon on
Oh
this
my
team
God,
may
can you
have
imagine?
Or, like, they all either have natural speed or a priority move, including, I mean,
I haven't seen that since people tried to emulate Wolf's Perish Trap team.
legitimate, but it is still a way of moving first. Comparing that to Shoma, who's
Or Perish Trap Success, I mean, it wasn't his team. His
Typically
Flutter
say,
didn't
like,
have
we have one of the
booster
different predictions,
Sped
but
F.
in terms of like not even thinking about the matchup, but in terms of philosophy, I think that my philosophy aligns more with Hirofumi's team. So I'm curious.
Checks
really,
all your boxes.
it really does. It has taunt,
Is this has to be, this is Hirofumi, right? Like this has to be like a
So I'm
mistype.
really curious to see how Shoma, because like
I can't believe I didn't catch that earlier, right? Like that's totally a mistype.
Right way to play, right? Like there's
Yeah,
so
it
many
is.
ways you can approach this. So I'm really curious to see.
They misspelled his
how
name.
Shoma proves my
Unfortunate.
philosophy wrong, right? Saying, hey, like maybe what you do works, but there's other ways of playing that also work here. Because Shoma, honestly, his team is like kind of it works against a lot of what I believe to be true about the game, and so I'm so excited to see him kind of use his team and showcase what makes it, like why it works and what makes it work. You know,
I'd also argue that it kind of goes against like even his philosophy that has worked for him in the past. At least, like I mean, 2015 is the team that I think people probably know most about that he has used, and he had Prankster Thunderous. He had a lot of ways to move first in that team as well.
Yeah,
so.
Kangaskhan, I believe, had Sucker Punch. Or
Yeah, I think you might be right. I think it was Sucker Punch. So yeah, like I'd say that team was a lot more balanced in terms of like the speeds, like you said.
Yeah.
And I certainly haven't seen Shoma use a hard Trick Room team, but this is probably the closest as it gets.
You know, it's kind of Cresselia, Heatran, Amoonguss, Landorus.
Oh?
Kangaskhan hands.
And then the Sylveon would be Thunderous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one. I'm not sure the parallel works there.
It's Chol.
That's right.
But it is fake out physically. It's like.
I think it is, which I wrote this down at the beginning, but Shoma won Worlds in 2015. I think it's really interesting to see somebody who's been around as long as Shoma has trying these off-meta picks. And I understand it's a relatively low stakes tournament, but it's really cool.
Normally Thunderous is the last.
I think a lot of people get locked into ideas that specific things are really good, and then they don't ever change. I'm looking at you, people who say that Fire, Water, Grass core is the only thing that matters. It's not if your Fire, Water, and Grass don't actually fulfill any roles on your team. It's much more important to fill roles on your team, and it just so happens that a lot of Fire, Water, Grass cores have those varied roles that they can fill. While also being pretty good defensively. But
So let's go ahead and
yeah, I really like long-time players challenging arms. Okay, so we do see the POW and the Ursh. Yeah, I mean this is kind of what I expected as a lead, right? We're looking at if we can go back so we see all four.
So let's go ahead and see Shoma open us up with Iron Hands Cresselia versus Hirofumi with
So looking at Iron Hands Cress, you have to fake out one and hope that the other one doesn't kill you. I think probably the safer fake out is for Chien-Pao, because Chien-Pao has Icicle Crash and that can flinch you. But from Hirofumi's perspective, like I think you kind of just need to go in. And I mean, like I guess you could punish it too, right, if you really want to. But I think getting Trick Room up is going to be so helpful for Shoma that it's probably worth wasting a turn here, or like quote unquote wasting a turn here to make sure that goes up. God, brain, please. He could just decide to not set up Trick Room and go after, like maybe predict that the Chien-Pao protects because it's the most likely fake out target and go for a wild charge into the Urshifu, and then a Lunar Blessing to heal up whatever damage you took while also getting the KO on the Urshifu. That could also be a worthwhile way to pilot this turn. So interesting to see what Shoma wants to go with. I feel like Hirofumi is the one that's pressured right now. It's hard to KO a Cresselia, and Urshifu's not going to do it by itself, and I don't think Chien-Pao is going to do it by itself either, right? So Having a fake out to totally deny one Pokemon from attacking and having the ability to set up Trick Room to support the rest of your team through speed control for the rest of the game is really massive. It's another one of those situations, sort of like I was talking about with the Heatran and the Amoonguss on the field, where the more passive lead, theoretically, is actually the one exerting pressure. Super interesting in terms of how it affects like the game and the theory and all that kind of stuff. But let's see how this plays out.
Genpao, Urshifu, these are pretty well-known duels to take the stage here. How do you think the matchup is?
So I feel like it favors Shoma here, right? Because we have the threat of Fake Out and Trick Room, and very importantly, this is non-Terra Ghost Chenpao. Maybe you all can guess in the chat what type it is. You're not going to guess it?
Yeah, you're not going to guess it.
It's Poison. It's Terra Poison Life Orb Chenpao, which is something I missed initially. So, yeah, I mean, I think that like this is interesting because I feel like with Iron Hands, it's such an important Pokemon that sometimes like giving up some positioning in exchange for damage on it can be favorable. So I'm really curious to see kind of what happens here. It also is worth noting that Shoma, his Cresselia is not really under pressure here for Trick Room, so maybe we'll just see a Volt Switch come out and try and get something like Sylveon, who would be very powerful. But no, it is
right, fakes out into the Chenpao.
I like that move. I think it makes sense.
This was always going to be the most consistent option, so I'm kind of happy that they went for it. But
I don't think it'll be in range of like Aqua Jet Sucker Punch, although yeah, maybe.
Sort of ruined.
I think it is in range of Aqua Jet Sucker Punch, but I'm not sure if you care. And switching into a different Pokemon also beats that anyway, so.
Hirofumi has like multiple ways to pressure down the Iron Hands before it can even move, and it just took a lot of damage. So I think even though Shoma was able to get the Trick Room,
if you want to, I think the safest play for Shoma this turn is actually switch out and Lunar Blessing. So take the hits, take the single hit, right? Because Sucker Punch is not actually going to hit you, and then Lunar Blessing it up. Lunar Blessing the Aqua Jet damage off would be probably what I would go for. But I mean, an Ally Switch as well would be pretty crazy if he decides to go for Ally Switch. And right, he does have Ally Switch, right? I'm not crazy. He doesn't have Ally Switch. Never mind. Disregard.
Oh, a huge survival, but Sucker Punch.
Yeah, lives, but Sucker takes it.
Right, you have priority in all your Pokemon. Like, you're able to take out the Iron Hands. Moonblast would do a fair
So what do we see? Do we see a Moonblast, or did they go for? They do go for Moonblast, and they bring it into the Urshifu. That does over half. So this is a much different story than the last time we saw Cresselia with Moonblast facing down an Urshifu. This time, the Cresselia actually has enough power to 2-hit KO it, even without Terra. So that makes a big difference. It probably also does quite a bit of damage into this Chenpao as well. This Cresselia, unlike most of the Cresselias we've seen today, is actually showing itself to be a threat. And that changes the dynamic of the matchup a ton.
Yeah. The fact that Shoma's not instantly locking in makes me think it's not Sylveon in the back, because it seems like a pretty free Pokemon to bring in here.
Yeah. The thing is that you actually have 3 good options.
You know, I don't think there's really anything that Shoma could bring in the back that isn't excellent into these two. Landorus is really good. Sylveon is really good. Amoonguss is decent. Heatran is insane. I would have preferred to bring in whatever you wanted. Terra to cover whatever weaknesses you need to cover. And then Helping Hand it and just blow these 2 Pokemon away from her. Have Shoma just like obliterate the 2 Pokemon on Hirofumi's side.
Like basically you gave up your Iron Hands in exchange pretty much for Trick Room. So bringing in Amoonguss here feels a little like antithetical to the pace that Shoma that I would be wanting to play at, but Shoma's often a player who has a plan. It just isn't always obvious. So, yeah, but I do think, Yuki, that you have a good point that maybe Sylveon isn't
actually. Holy shit!
Is here like it should be.
Oh my God, Grass Knot is gonna matter.
Going for the hyper voice and
Grass Knot's gonna matter, guys. Holy shit, Grass Knot's gonna matter. All right, here's what's gonna happen this turn. Here's my prediction. Amoonguss. So I brought up the team sheet for Shoma, right? This is what we're looking at. This team sheet. I'll even zoom in a little bit so you can see it a little bit better. Looking at Shoma's team sheet. Get this out of my face. Looking at Shoma's team sheet. And we have the Amoonguss with the Grass Knot. Grass Knot, I'm assuming Grass Knot is in range to kill. So Grass Knot can actually pick up this Urshifu, and Moonblast can pick up this this Chenpao. And if he wants to too, like he can take an extra turn and like he can take an extra turn and do a spore if he wants to, right? Because what does Chien-Pao actually threaten for most of your stuff, right? You could just well, I mean, it does threaten the Amoonguss pretty hard, but you can Terra to avoid that, right? And then the Amoonguss isn't really threatened by anything. So you could Terra the Amoonguss and put the Chien-Pao to sleep, and then you're in an even better position. It's more guaranteed. But I think this Grass Knot's actually gonna matter. I think we're seeing the Grass Knot matter right now.
And whatever they do, you can even bring in your own Amoonguss for the Cresselia slot.
Interesting switch out of Cresselia here, actually.
Oh, and it looks like it's the Heatran.
Let me see this Grass Knot pick up his KO.
Huh. I guess.
He switched it out.
I would anticipate this would be a Rillaboom switch and a Protect over from the Chien-Pao. Pretty safe given the board state, but I guess Shoma might have read that and brought the Heatran in there, kind of baiting out the Rillaboom in a way.
Yeah, we'll have to see. It is going to be Protect from the Chien-Pao, so basically it's unlikely anything happens this turn unless this is a very aggressive Pollen Puff prediction.
Nope, it looks like it's a Spore. And
okay, Spore.
Slot.
Feels a little
all right,
risky, right?
all right, fine. Don't give me the spicy play.
Yeah, I mean, Shoma's positioned himself in a way that both of his Pokemon are now.
I actually want to know. Let's do a quick calc. I'm gonna make this super quick because again, I'm up later than I should be. So we'll bring Amoonguss and Ursh. Should actually use blank sets. Yeah, Grass Knot. Granted, I haven't EV'd these at all. Zero investment in anything, right? So this could be a much bulkier Urshifu and all that kind of stuff. I always want to preface that whenever I'm talking about this kind of stuff. But you can see Grass Knot doing a really absurd amount of damage to this Urshifu. I bet that's what it's there for. You know, making this like a legitimate threat into Urshifu. Like this is a lot more than I expected. This has potential to Oko the Urshifu. That's actually really fucked up. Like, oh my god. That's insane. We've seen Leaf Storm used for this a whole lot, but Grass Knot doesn't have a downside and has more potential upside against some matchups. So that's really interesting. Grass Knot, yeah. Grass Knot is really threatening in this matchup, actually. Let's see how much it does to a Chien-Pao. Again, not going to EV it at all. I just want to get like a rough estimate, right? So level 50 does 50%. Oh my god, this is insane. This is nuts. Grass Knot's going to go crazy. Grass Knot might pick up multiple KOs this game.
It is worth noting that there is something a little awkward here, which is the Heatran is under pressure actually from Rillaboom because of the Stomping Tantrum. Which isn't like the most common interaction, but it's the current
so
interaction.
insane.
So Heatran might be actually pressured to Terrasilize to Grass, in which case that this Chien-Pao could beat it later because it doesn't have substitute.
Stomping, I do believe, gets damage nerfed by Grassy Terrain, so I'm not actually sure if the Stomping Tantrum even kills this Heatran. I think a big ol' Heat Wave is a really good option here. That being said, I mean, there's not really a reason to not Terra, I don't think.
Heat Wave and Spore combination is very powerful.
Yeah, 100%. So we are going to see Chien-Pao switch out here. I think this makes sense. You're pressuring the...
So bringing in the Urshifu,
There's no Terrasalization.
fake outs into the
In my opinion,
Amoonguss.
that's pretty risky. Shoma crossing his hands. Heat Wave misses the... Oh, sorry. That was a flinch. That was a flinch. Both survive.
Massive deeps.
Yeah, the Life Orb actually paying off on a pretty big... Oh! Oh my goodness.
If I had to guess, that
Burn
was
onto the Rilla.
Burn on, right? Because,
Probably.
I mean, now the Urshifu's
I mean, that's really important, right?
And
You're not weak to...
wow.
If you can avoid having to Terra to live any of these hits that they're throwing out from you, or that they're throwing out at you, you're in a really good spot with your Heatran. So
I really don't want Urshifu to fall asleep, and I believe
I think protect U-turn is probably the move here. You're gonna lose your Rillaboom, but I don't think that really matters. Your Rillaboom's not really doing anything at this point anyway. God, this Amoonguss set is so cool. Just by like, so one of the biggest thing I want to talk more about this Amoonguss set. What we have just like time here, right?
I mean, you are gonna have speed advantage after this, and like one of the advantages is that
the Amoonguss set is so cool because my biggest problem with Amoonguss is that it's so passive all the time. It never does any damage. It doesn't do anything on the field if it's left alone. And Grass Knot is like totally flipping the script. It turns out that Grass Knot does an insane amount of damage to Urshifu. It 2-hit KOs Urshifu. Potentially even better than that, depending on the EV spread, right? It potentially 2-hit KOs Qianpao. It does 2-hit KO most variants of Qianpao. That's wild.
Oh, went for a Grass Knot into the Urshifu.
Yeah, Grass Knot is also boosted by this grassy terrain right now. Like, this is...
Will Rocky Helmet take that out?
I think it will, yes.
Wow, yeah. So I guess
Grass Knot actually murks things.
That might seem weird
It's
to let
wild.
Pokemon go down, but your Rillaboom has been burnt. So like, you really don't want to let Cresselia get up a second Trick Room for free. Like, if it's gonna go up, which like currently it kind of looks like it. Oh.
And the Trick Room is up, so you were correct.
Okay. So Trick Room does end there. So yeah, basically, interesting that Arcanine comes in here. I almost wonder if this is not taunt Urshifu for Hirofumi. Yeah, so I almost wonder if like
I think it's Head Smash time, baby.
are we gonna see a Head Smash here?
Head Smash, baby. Head Smash time, baby. Oh man, I love Head Smash.
Oh my goodness, this could be very interesting. The Terra type on the Arcanine is actually normal, so you know, Shoma's actually.
So this is one situation like where Rockhead would have probably been better, right?
Cheap. Like you can sacrifice a Amoonguss, but the bulk on Hirofumi's Pokemon is just gonna kind of. It feels like it's kind of lacking into this Heatran with Urshifu getting so low.
Yeah, and I really like the sacrifice from Rillaboom
But
because now you actually have two Pokemon that pressure down Cresselia a lot. Like you don't have a free spore into the Urshifu.
I'm not sure if it would have changed a whole lot anyway. Looks like he's gonna go and try and remove this Amoonguss this turn. Head Smash here is like Head Smash here will annihilate anything on the field. Except Cress, actually. It won't kill Cress. But Head Smash, I've played a lot of Choice Band Hisuian Arcanine. Head Smash actually has, even without Qianpao boost, has potential to OHKO a Heatran. It takes 1 trillion damage in recoil because it's not Rockhead, right?
75% of its health, and it didn't even take an attack. That is pure recoil damage alone.
Yes. Is Head Smash? It's not.
Head Smash is 50%, I believe.
And the Rocky Helmet.
And the Rocky Helmet, yeah.
But yeah, that's a situation where Rockhead would have been very much so preferred. I'm not sure if Heatran even really needs to go for Earth Power here to remove this Hisuian Arcanine. It could just be a double up, like Heat Wave plus, let's see, what is it? Yeah, Heat Wave plus Moonblast from Cress, or Heat Wave plus Helping Hand from Cress might even pick it up. It's 4 times resisted, so I'm not sure if I trust that.
This is really tricky because, like, and by the way, here's an advanced thing we're seeing. Shoma only has 1 Pokemon in the back, but he's taking his time to think about his next move because it's tricky. You want to Earth Power the Arcanine, but if you get the turn wrong here, like if Heatran goes down to a Sacred Sword...
Actually, it's a little bit more HP than I thought it was, the Arcanine, so I take that back. I think you actually do need to commit to remove this. But I also think it's probably worth it. I think Moonblast is going to be enough to deal with this Qianpao. Oh, man, actually, this Terra Poison might be relevant this game.
Yeah, it seemed at first that like
but Trick Room's back up. Trick Room is back up, so you're in a position where... Oh man, there's so many 50-50s happening this turn. Trick Room's back up, so you're in a position where it might not help you later. You could be in a position where you Earth Power this Arcanine this turn, then you Earth Power the Qianpao next turn, kill both because you're tearing into poison to make it
I mean, Cresselia probably lives Choice Band Head Smash, right?
die easier, but like...
Ruin, I don't think so.
Oh man, this is really, really tricky. And we actually see the value in Terra Poison. It's not a common choice, but with Life Orb, getting the resistance to fairy is kind of big.
Yes.
Heatran protects.
Heatran protects. This is so big.
Oh, what does a Cresselia do? It definitely can't do that much damage.
Moonblast into the Parapoison. Does like 30 damage. That's a crit. That's why it did so much damage. Head Smash probably KOs. It's a crit.
Oh. Cresselia, one of the tankiest Pokemon in the entire game, gets one hit KO'd.
Bye, Arcanine. Thanks for your service, brother.
Oh my goodness, because Life Orb Heat Wave might do enough damage to both of the remaining Pokemon.
Yes.
So yeah, now it's just a test of whether or not this Heatran could survive a turn, because I do think that they are right. Wolf and oh god, what is his name? I think it's Yuki.
Ending that's actually huge because that is in Heat Wave range. I'm pretty confident. So
I'm so bad with names.
Oh, but now you have a call of the. I guess there's no reason not to Terra Heatran here. Never mind.
Yes. Yeah,
but yeah, you should always Terra Heatran, and I think you can protect just to like see what's happening, right? But you're gonna double priority this. Like you can't protect out of Trick Room. It's not a possibility here. So the ice weakness is not going to become relevant.
Could actually be pretty threatening. So Heatran's going to Terrestrialize to Grass here. I didn't see what Hirofumi went for though.
I think he went for a double protect. I guess there's no reason not to get an extra Trick Room.
Oh, Chenpao didn't protect last turn. I'm so sorry. I got confused. Yeah.
Oh,
okay. So stalling out a turn of Trick Room here, baiting out the Terra. This is a good play.
If you're not.
I mean, it just makes it guaranteed, but like, there was never a situation where you don't tear the Heatran, I think.
That it can KO with Aqua Jet, but if you're not comfortable with that, honestly,
no,
like
I would think Life Orb Sucker Punch should do like maybe 45%.
Going for it. I think this Heat Wave kills. Yeah, I think you had to double priority, man. This Shoma's popping the fuck off. But yeah.
Because Hirofumi was praying, which makes me think he thought there was a possibility that the Chenpao can survive, and if you saw its HP is actually a little bit higher than just
it wasn't
normal.
minimum. Yeah. There's also the odds of a miss, right? Because with the Trick Room turns like being as they were, I'm pretty sure that both close if either Pokemon dodged there, then like Icicle Crash would pick the one shot up and would have 2 chances to do it. Because then they could protect Trick Room would end, and then Close Combat would be a 2 shot. So we actually see the value of. It feels like Close Combat versus Heatran has been relevant a fair bit.
I don't know mathematically if one can say like, because you could also go for a double protect again, right? And then like the
grabbing the water. Stay hydrated. Stay hydrated, friends.
Yeah, like Heat Wave double connecting.
You think clearer when you're hydrated.
But is there 2 turns of Trick Room left or 1?
I think there's 2. If it was 1, I think it was definitely correct.
Remember whenever you're playing something at a really high level to feed your body.
Heatran came in and protected as Cresselia got fainted. Double protect.
You don't want to show up to your tournament with brain fog. It's a good way to lose.
I mean, like, to be honest, Yuki, we're seeing kind of the value of, or like the volatility of low accurate moves in this format, right? It seems like there are some Pokemon where like we saw Magma Storm Heatran, we've seen Heat Wave Heatran.
We are seeing a whole lot of like so this is something that I came to a realization with on my own. This also happens to be what they're talking about, which has spurred this conversation from me. But we're talking about a whole lot of inaccurate moves, and one thing that I really hate is how little accurate moves you have on the fire side. Like Fairy gets Dazzling Gleam. I think every type should have a Dazzling Gleam. A special spread move that does damage with no drawback and is 100% accurate. But stuff like Fire has to rely on Heat Wave, which has the miss chance. It also gains the burn chance, but I would be much happier running it if it had no burn chance and was 100% accurate. And I think that's not an uncommon sentiment. Same kind of thing happens with like stuff like Muddy Water, right? Muddy Water on the water side. Not 100% accurate, has an extra effect, but I think everybody who plays a Muddy Water Pokemon would be much happier if it didn't have that effect and it just hit every time. I'm very frustrated by that regularly. By inaccurate moves like that regularly. And other stuff like Air Slash does not need to have a miss chance. Air Slash does not need to be 95. Just let us have accurate moves, please.
Close out the Trick Room turns and get it up a second time.
Watching Shoma is like feeling like I'm like the guy who, like the meme with the guy who's really confused with all the question marks. That's how I feel. But and then like it's like he's like I'm like Shoma made it like oh this play doesn't make any sense. He lost so much ground. He's gonna lose for sure. And then like it all clicks on one turn. It's like wait he won. Like it's like he's losing. He's winning. A big adjustment from Shoma here. and adjustment from Hirofumi. So both players
Ooh.
bringing the fairy type.
Okay.
Didn't bring in the
Okay,
last
this is
game.
pretty interesting.
Getting interested to see how this plays out.
Sylveon's in massive danger because of this Arcanine, actually. I think if we look at Hirofumi's team,
Right, like there aren't really many Pokemon that
the team doesn't have a great matchup into Sylveon other than this Arcanine, and I think this Arcanine really has to do its job here. Although it might actually be a prediction here to switch out and bring in the Rillaboom, specifically because they don't think they're going to keep the Sylveon in. But I think if Shoma keeps the Sylveon in, and kind of in a rough spot, you know, if Arcanine switches out and you bring in your Rillaboom, and then the Amoonguss does, like, I don't know, X...
So there's a recurring theme for really strong players that maybe...
Something that, like, draws an attention, right? This Hyper Voice is going to hurt.
Imagine Amoonguss just terrestrializes to water here. You've now dealt with your opponent's Terra, and you didn't have to play a mind game, right?
Yeah, and you're in really good shape now if the...
So it's a really 50-50-ish match. Okay, yeah. With the Sylveon switching out, this is always the correct play. You'll notice as well that Hirofumi did Terra here, and it is Terra Grass. So in a position where Amoonguss is basically neutralized.
Sorry, I got so excited. I was like, I got it. But the Amoonguss does stay in.
And your threatening of the Sylveon early on in the game was enough to force it to switch, and you basically get a free turn here, right? And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a Calm Mind into a Fake Out into the Cresselia, into another Calm Mind, and then you're at a +2 Flutter Mane. Just starts killing everything.
Yeah, in terms of turn ones, I have a hard time picturing this going any better for Hirofumi because you got a boost on your Flutter Mane.
I mean, even +1 is probably more than he needs.
Amoonguss can't do anything in front of these two.
Also, 162, I believe, is max HP for Flutter Mane.
Turn to get off the Trick Room,
So this is a very, very bulky Flutter, which makes sense if you're running Calm Mind.
We kind of go for obvious play, like we don't really want Trick Room to go up when you're in such an advantageous state.
I feel like the offense here is just so significant that this makes a lot of sense to me personally, because like you figure, okay, Amoonguss could Rage Powder to stop this play, but if imagine it's Fake Out Calm Mind, then like I think things start to get really drastic, because then you can go for because also Shoma last game the key Pokemon was Heatran, so if Heatran's in the back here, then Shoma has 4 special attackers. And if it's Iron Hands, then I guess it could be Iron Hands. It's not Heatran though. And then this Iron Hands also, it doesn't have Heavy Slam, so its best move is suddenly Drain Punch into this Terra Grass Flutter Mane. So Hirofumi is in an unbelievably dominant position here.
Yes.
And there's no Rage Powder. No switch outs, no Rage Powder. Oh my
Big damage. Yeah, it's massive damage. Woodhammer into the crest too. Yeah, this is entirely changed, right? Like, how does Shoma come back from this? I think Heatran would be the only thing that he could do. If he has Heatran in the back, this is doable. If he does not have Heatran in the back, this game's over.
You know, Shoma's Pokemon are all very slow. Like, you just get one wrong turn, and you get one turn to set up for Hirofumi, and it seems like it's really hard for him to come back, right? Like, if you had a Chien-Pao, for example, you still have an Icicle Crash that's, like, you know, not only super effective against both these, but even if the Flutter didn't terrestrialize, like, you have the opportunity to, you know, go for a flinch, for example. But now it seems like really Shoma doesn't really have any counterplay. Like, I just can't think of what he could switch in and out to position better. Yeah, we know Sylveon's in the back, which, like, I mean, against Assault Vest Rillaboom and, like, Calm Mind specially boosted, or like already one Calm Mind set up Flutter Mane, like, it's not going to do much. I feel like it's on to the last Pokemon. That being said, it could be that Heatran. Like,
if it is Heatran, Shoma has a chance. If it's not Heatran, I think just stall time. Think about what you can do better game 3. Because you're not doing anything.
The Amoonguss didn't switch out the previous turn, because at the very least, if you had sacrificed a Cresselia, for example, then you could have, I don't know, like a Sylveon and an Iron Hand.
So one thing, you know, I've been talking a lot about how setup is potentially risky because you're in a situation a lot of the time where you don't have power immediately on tap. Against these slower teams, against Trick Room teams in particular, setup is one of the most powerful things you can do, right? Because you probably have a free turn, especially if, like, I remember doing this with Scizor, Swords Dancing on the Trick Room turn, and then their Trick Room Sweeper takes, like, 75%, if not just straight up dies to my Scizor's Bullet Punch. You know, really, really powerful stuff. to set up against teams that are trying to be a little bit slower than you. It's just that it becomes so much of a liability against hyper offense, and it does reduce the pace of the match, right?
This is the worst I have ever seen a Moongus move ever, and it is Iron Hands, so that does explain why there was no switch.
Yeah, hands. Yeah, I think this game's very over.
That just brings you a little bit of
I do. I love when players build their teams in a way that invalidates a Moongus, and I think it's going to be a forfeit here. So, wow, yeah, after a pretty dominant game, well, maybe not dominant from Shoma, but a very well-positioned game one from Shoma, we see the adjustment Hirofumi is able to make. I mean, that's what's so cool about VGC, right? Like, you're able to make Pokemon adjustments. Like, Fluttermane did not come in game one. Hirofumi had a lot of trouble. And by just switching up the leads, pretty much switching up the Pokemon he brought, he was able to immediately gain such a big advantage. I don't know.
I don't hate the lead from Shoma, though. I think there's a lot of leads from Hirofumi that just lose. Straight up, like, actually straight up just lose to a Moongus plus Sylveon. A Moongus gets a Rage Powder off, guaranteed, turn 1, and blows you up. Sylveon just annihilates you. So, you know, the lead ended up. It's a very volatile lead, clearly, right? But the lead had potential.
Do you remember if Chen Pao was in the back in the last game from Hirofumi? Because I actually can't recall.
That being said, it got super hard punished. It got super hard punished. Now we're in a position where we're in game 3.
So he's not trying to trick Shoma again. He probably just wants to start setting up the Fluttermane as soon as possible. And yeah, I wonder if Shoma will let him do that. I guess the point is that he has Rillaboom that has access to U-turn, so you can reposition, and I guess you can kind of threaten what happened in game 2 again, and then reposition like what happens. Yeah, my thought process here is that if I'm in Hirofumi's spot, I'm thinking, okay, Cresselia is going to be led, right? Like, because once the Calm Mind goes up, it becomes very difficult to stop Cresselia. Or it becomes very difficult to set Trick Room up. So something I think, like, if I'm Shoma here, I'm probably bringing Cresselia, Iron Hands up front with Heatran, and maybe going Sylveon in the back. That would be my impression. I think Iron Hands needs to come here. I think Cresselia needs to come here, and I think not bringing Heatran is like, I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but I think.
Sorry, I'm looking at some stuff off stream, so I'm not talking a whole lot.
I
mean, Heatran seems like one of the best Pokemon in this entire matchup. I'm shocked he didn't bring Heatran last turn or last game. I feel like Heatran is just so good here.
He's making a face.
You know, the only real way that Shoma can really play around Hirofumi's team without Trick Room active is with Iron Hands. So it feels almost essential to bring that. I feel like Iron Hands and Heatran are pretty essential. I would always bring Hands and Heatran and probably Cress. Yep, Cress Iron Hands. I think this is the best lead that he has access to.
By the way, I assume it's speed, but I feel like we should just confirm.
So we see the Grassy Terrain activates, Booster Energy, and it's going to be speed, as you said.
Just confirm.
Yeah.
Shadow Ball did a lot at +1.
That's right.
Yeah,
Shadow Ball did do a lot at +1, but you know, you can. It's max HP. We know that. You can still bug yourself out pretty hard and get a speed boost because they're your highest stats. If you are just timid, you'll get a speed boost. Or if your speed is 1 point higher than your special attack, you'll get a speed boost. But remember what I said earlier. You're moving upwards of 230 special attack after 1 boost, even if your min special attack, obviously without a special attack dropping nature, which you wouldn't run on Fluttermane.
Taking advantage of the fact that Shoma kind of has to have Cresselia on the board to get Trick Room up and kind of spend the second turn of Trick Room in because
oh my goodness,
switches out Cress.
That is very bad.
I don't like that at all.
Heatran coming in here, but the Fega was actually launched into the Iron Hands this time. So I don't want to say a dead turn, but it's not a good turn if you're Shoma because now again speed control. There's no speed control on this board right now. Shoma's Pokemon are just gonna be slower.
Right, and Shoma doesn't even have access to Heavy Slam or even Flash Cannon, so it doesn't really pressure this Fluttermane too much. And
I don't think this Fluttermane cares at all. This Fluttermane might set up again.
Terra Grass here. If it were Terra Water, the threat of Dazzling Gleam and Woodhammer would be very significant, but it is Terra Grass, which is actually working in Shoma's favor here, I think, compared to like something like Terra Water. I think Shoma's got to find a way through this, to be honest, because right now this Fluttermane looks like it's about to just take off and run away with the game.
I mean, one thing on Shoma's side, right? Like this Fluttermane is
Shoma still has
clearly very bulky, but you're in a position where
after turn 1, we're like, oh, this game is so rough. Like, Yeah.
you might be able to kill it with his hands.
Strength, sorry.
And if you can, then you're actually in a decent spot. I don't think there's a whole lot of other snowball-y threats on Hirofumi's team. So removing the Fluttermane early is of the highest priority.
Again from Fluttermane, this thing is now 2 stages of increased special defense. U-turn coming out here. My guess is that this is going to go into
U-turn in the hands.
The damage of Wild Charge. Shoma is actually doing like something of an offensive pin here, where you think, okay, well, if Fluttermane doesn't terrestrialize, then Wild Charge will do a ton of damage, and if it does terrestrialize, Heat Wave becomes super effective. So I think it makes sense. The question is, how much are these moves going to do? Both of Hirofumi's Pokemon have already moved for the turn. The question is, will Heat Wave connect?
Oh, there's a miss, and it's missing the Arcanine.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, hits the Flutter.
Not doing very much damage.
Does decent damage, all things considered. That's 2 Calm Minds. Wild Charge almost gets the KO. I think you're in a position, let's see. So 162 to 123.
Definitely not, yeah.
So it's not in range of Heat Wave right now, unfortunately. And as I said earlier, remember, I used to play a lot of Choice Band Arcanine. If this is Max Attack Adamant, it has a real chance to OHKO this Heatran with Head Smash if it wants to. So we'll see what exactly it goes for here. But
yes, you can double into the Iron Hands and take a kill. However, what you could do is terrestrialize to grass, get a single target attack that's stab and boosted by the grassy terrain. Because of the grassy terrain, like Heat Wave I don't think Heat Wave will KO here. I do think Terra Blast will KO here.
Oh.
You know what I mean? I don't know. It's kind of risky because like
you're boosted by the grassy terrain.
Because you don't know that the Arcanine's not going to
Heat Wave or Terra Grass Terra Blast would absolutely kill. I have zero doubts. Oh my god, that hand survived a +2 Fluttermane. I mean, it's still gonna die, but wow, I'm impressed.
Oh, it could be an Earth Power too.
I don't think Earth Power is stronger though, to be honest.
Earth Power, I think, actually gets nerfed by the thing as well.
Oh, and missed the Fluttermane.
Oh no.
Misses the Flutter. I think that's over.
Heat Wave is just these inaccurate moves. Like they're risky. They're so risky to use.
So risky. And
Rip Eruption Heatran, really. Rip Eruption Heatran.
The Arcanine didn't really have any incentive.
Eruption doesn't miss.
But I guess the Earth Power is probably too weak.
It's hard to ignore the Fluttermane. Like I get it.
Yes.
Oh man, Alice should be nice here.
Yep. Can't really bring it down to 50-50 there.
The only advantage.
Yeah, looks like Hirofumi's in a great position now. Heat Wave miss that turn was pretty detrimental, although I don't think it would have killed anyway. God, it's so rough.
Something here, like you know that like you could Terra to grass this turn, for example, and it might be okay. I like Hirofumi's ability to get a lead and then just start trading.
I'm not sure if there's ever really a great position. You know, I talked about this before, right? Like I think if Trick Room doesn't go up, Shoma loses. We saw Trick Room go up twice in Game 1 and he won. Trick Room did not go up the way that he wanted to in Game 2 and he lost. Now Trick Room has not gone up in Game 3 and it looks like he's in a losing position. And I'm not sure how he brings this back, honestly. This probably could. Heatran has Protect, actually, so this could be a situation where you live the Shadow Ball, end up getting. Well, Heatran didn't Protect, actually.
That's a lot of damage.
Will they survive?
Yeah, Flare Blitz takes it.
Cresselia goes down. What an incredible double up. We see the power of Arcanine and Hisui just doing so much damage with a single target.
And actually, yeah, Arcanine was banded. You know it's not going to attack the Heatran. So.
He's so expressive. Whether he's winning or like losing, just
yeah, pretty rough.
So the Heat Wave miss didn't really matter because it wasn't killing 23 from grassy terrain. I mean, it would have gone down this turn. It might have, yeah. So, yeah, that's rough. Especially giving up your terrestrialization. It's also worth noting that Hirofumi hasn't even terrestrialized yet.
He doesn't even have.
This is looking kind of.
What does Shoma have in the back?
Trying to find a way
I mean,
through.
the one saving grace here is that this Arcanine can't stay in, or it just gives you a Heat Wave boost, or it gives you a Flash Fire boost. So.
Very good matchup into Arcanine at the current stage. So like you can't even touch it. So you have to switch out once and probably have to take a T.
Sylveon Specs. Yikes, that's dead as hell. You absolutely Flare Blitz this turn into that.
So I like having Protect on a bunch of my Pokemon.
I was just about to mention.
Shoma's team has one Protect. So when Hirofumi...
On the Pokemon that doesn't need to Protect right
exactly, now. Right? So Heatran is the only Pokemon on the team that can Protect, and we're seeing why that's a risk, because in this position, like, Hirofumi's able to always double attack the partner, and, yeah, like,
Yeah, it would need to be a Heatran reverse sweep, and I just don't think it can do it.
There's no counterplay because
I don't think it can do it.
Just too threatening.
Yes, absolutely. So, yeah, I think you just.
We still had Terra left on the Sylveon. There's potential for a Terra Fire to like do something.
I think that makes sense. Like Arcanine, Flare Blitz. This is. I wouldn't be shocked if this did 90%. By 90, I meant.
Oh my god, 99%. It's literally at 5, like less than 5 HP.
Earth Power comes out, but I feel like it's too little, too late, to be honest.
Yes, I think
Yeah, what does the Sylveon do anymore? Sylveon dies to Dazzling. So you Dazzling, and then you bring in whatever you have that deals with Heatran well. You just continue to trade down, and you win, because Heatran doesn't have a reliable recovery here. And in fact, I believe it is Life Orb, so it'll hurt itself every time it attacks. Right? I can actually check that. Let me check.
Very commanding game 2 and game 3 from Hirofumi, it seems like.
Absolutely. I mean,
Hirofumi, Shoma's is actually what we're looking for. Yeah, Shoma's has Life Orb, so it's just overwhelmingly over.
Just like this Fluttermane was really the key player. I mean, it's interesting because like it didn't even come game 1. And I think that's something that top players really, like a skill that top players have, is identifying when a Pokemon needed to come and it didn't. I think it's going to be a forfeit out of Shoma. So
yes.
Well played set. I think that like Hirofumi really recognized that one of their Pokemon was just so incredibly strong. And I think something that's worth mentioning here, by the way, is that like Shoma didn't bring
very cool game though.
And I think part of that was that it didn't have Terra Blast. I think the other part of that is that the Rillaboom discouraging Earthquake makes it a lot like scarier, in my opinion. But I think the real thing is the Terra Blast, because like you had trouble with the Terra Grass Fluttermane, right? Like the Terra Grass honestly was the unsung hero here. Like it pretty much solely won Hirofumi the game on it, and like being able to okay. Here, like,
let's talk about Terra Grass Fluttermane for a sec. I've been a huge fan of Terra Grass Fluttermane for so long. I've been running that since Regulation C, and I think finally people are starting to realize how good it is. It was good before because it gave you a really good matchup into Sun. Actually, Sun had a rough time dealing with you if you could like attack into the Torkoal, because they can't put you to sleep anymore. And if you're Speed Booster, I think you actually ended up outspeeding most forms of normal Lilligant. I don't think you can do this anymore against Hisuian Lilligant. So that was really good. It helped you a ton against Dondozo. Having Terra Grass Energy Ball was actually just my entire Dondozo answer for a while on a lot of my teams. Now it helps you against Urshifu. It helps you against Ting Lu. It helps you against the ton of water terrors that exist, right? It's just a good Terra. It's a really good Terra. It gives you an Amoonguss immunity. It gives you a Spore immunity and a Rage Powder immunity, I think, more importantly. So you can target down what you want. Removes your Steel weakness. Like, it does so much for you. And I'm really happy to see that people are picking up. I think actually basically every Fluttermane... No, there's one Fluttermane that was not Terra Grass. But I think every other Fluttermane we've seen today is Terra Grass, and we saw it all over the World Championships. I'm surprised it took as long as it did to catch on. I think it's been really strong for a really long time.
Like it pretty much solely won Hirofumi the game on not on its own, but like with any other Terra type, the Amoonguss becomes so much more threatening. In game 2,
it was really cool how in game 2 you would think like, okay, like game 1 I lost because I let them get Trick Room twice. Like I'm not even gonna let them get it up once. But actually, what he went for was like totally different. Like he just said, okay, my win con is gonna just be Fluttermane being immune to the Amoonguss. You can get up your Trick Room if you want, but I know that my Fluttermane is gonna be really hard for you under Trick Room. So I just think like the acumen to like just adjust and think like 2-3 levels deep is really, really admirable.
I do think, by the way, that the pivotal turn, thinking about it, because Shoma had no way of knowing this, but because the Pokemon in the back were, it was Rillaboom and Urshifu Water. I think that if that had been a Terra Grass, Terra Blast KO on the Fluttermane, the turn that the Heat Wave missed, that it was actually possible for a different result. But we do have our players now here with us, so what was going through your head like before game 2?
I don't really care about that question.
Shoma, after game 2, like the Fluttermane was really hard. How like what were you thinking for game 3? What was your plan to stop that?
2ゲーム目の羽ばたく髪が結構
いやー割りよく分かったというか2戦目はみたいな感じでそのしてまあなんかもうワイルはしてた
he realized through game two that he was, game two that he was very weak to Flutter Mane. And going into game two, actually, like he thought, okay, I think the worst thing that Hirofumi could do would be to lead Flutter Mane Arcanine. So I'm just gonna lead something that can do really well into everything else. So Moonga, Sylveon, just Rage Powers, Hyper Voice, everything. But it didn't really work out. And then in game three.
Yeah, so this is sort of what they're actually reinforcing what I talked about a little bit earlier. Shoma is saying that for the most part, Sylveon plus Amoonguss, Rage Powder plus Hyper Voice is actually really good into Shoma's team, or in not Shoma, Hirofumi's team. And that the decision specifically to lead Flutter Mane Arcanine really, really punished that one lead that otherwise would have been an excellent lead, right? I talked about how great Sylveon seems into a lot of things with speed control support. It does great into Chiampao, it does great into Urshifu, it does great into Tornadus, like a really powerful Pokemon, and he completely neutralized it with that lead. Because Choice Band Arcanine just blows that up. Choice Band Arcanine eats that for breakfast.
I think what he wanted to go for was, helping hand Wild Charge, but that's also not something that Hirofumi let happen. So, yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Kiss instead of Dazzling Gleam? Is that something that you considered, or like?
東洋には羽ばたく神の瞑想型は普段ドレインキスを採用されてるんですけど、その辺は検討されましたか？
ドレインキッスは検討してなくて、というのも瞑想を積んだ後の圧力がある技がマジカルシャインが一番なんだ。
Seems like he felt like the pressure that you can exert with Dazzling Gleam is a lot more than Draining Kiss, so that kind of outweighed the ability to heal up.
I see. Usual Pokemon, like why?
So he just talked about actually how the pressure from Dazzling Gleam is actually much more important to him than the recovery from Draining Kiss, and I think it makes it even more imperative to have the pressure and not the recovery. When you look at his team sheet and realize that you have Rillaboom, right? You always have grassy terrain. Every single Pokemon on your team that isn't flying or has the ability to levitate gets recovery from grassy terrain. So Flutter Mane also gets recovery from grassy terrain. Flutter Mane doesn't need, like when I was trying this, Rillaboom wasn't in the game. Flutter Mane doesn't actually need like leftovers or Draining Kiss or anything like that when it's getting healed every turn by Rillaboom. You can always protect. You can get, I think, like 12% back through 2 turns of recovery, and then just launch off powerful attacks, right? So I think that's a really great call, specifically now that Rillaboom is in the game, and some synergy that I'm not sure that I'm pretty positive that I'm pretty sure a lot of people wouldn't even pick up on. But that's another reason why I don't think Draining Kiss is particularly needed on Hirofumi's Flutter Mane.
Talk about the Sylveon. It's a very weird.
あまり見ないポケモン。
T タイプの技自体は相手のパーティーの何匹かにはやたら強いことが多いから強いかなみたいな。
なるほど。Yeah, so first his inspiration was seeing the senior world champion this year use Sylveon, and that kind of got him interested in trying it out. And he also wanted to find a really strong Pokemon to use in Trick Room. And I think the popular fairy type right now is Flutter Mane. And that's not really a great Pokemon you want to be using under Trick Room. And he felt like fairy type is a really strong offensive type that can really go well into at least 2 or 3 Pokemon on the opposing player's team. So he wanted to use that.
Also, we're seeing, we're seeing that they're talking specifically about the Sylveon and how that it matches up really well into things as long as you can get your Trick Room off. But we're actually seeing kind of a similar situation that we had when we had Chi-Yu Flutter Mane. That coverage, Fire and Fairy, is really excellent. And we saw actually that he has it. Shoma has it on his team because he's running Heatran. So you can almost think of this a little bit like the return of Chi-Yu Flutter, but under Trick Room. Kind of a cool thing to include on his team, I think. And it just makes sense. That coverage is really